Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start step 101 of our Inside Out project. What that step looks like, where we're headed to, is creating a menu using JSON and Ajax and placing it in the top of our page. Where we're coming from, we currently are in step 100, and the way that our page looks at this time is like this. We have the functionality of JavaScript working, and we're going to go ahead, check our folder real quick, make sure all of our files are right in step 100. We have our assets, our CSS, our footer, header, style. In the assets CSS, under JS, we have the header resize, which is what makes the text move. And then we have our index. In our index, before we move forward, we're going to make an update here, which this code will be made available to you in the assignment. And what that update is we're going to actually replace the slim version of jQuery with a full version of jQuery. And so what you can see is what's changed really is the slim is gone. And then, of course, we had to change the integrity because the integrity is based on the file and what's in it and how big it is and things like that. So this code will be made available to you in the assignment. I'll go ahead and put this in here, available in assignment. So now that we updated our code, we're going to save it. And we wanted to do that update because we wanted to ripple through everything. Initially, we did not use step folders, but what I did do is moved everything inside my step folder in step 100 so that we can easily break apart and see what we've done with each step. This step 100 folder, what we're going to do now, instead of working inside it and wrecking what we already have, if you're in Dreamweaver, we're going to use Control-D. Otherwise, you would want to just basically, we want to make a copy of this. And you see I've just made a copy of it. And we're going to rename it to Step 101. Don't update if you're in Dreamweaver. It wants to change the file paths. Just everything's relative to the folder it's in, so we're all safe with that. So don't update. And now we'll close this index.html because that was in our step 1 folder. And let's move into our step 101 folder, our step 100 folder. We'll move into our step 101 folder. We want to go out and we want to make sure that everything is good and working. So we go back out to our browser, and what we can do, if you're not using local, I'm using local WAMP and remote. So what I'm going to do is put in my test it locally. JavaScript works. I'm in step 101. So of course I didn't push it to my server yet. So what I'll do now is I'll come over here and I'll do a put of my step 101 folder. And we'll go and test it real quick. Awesome. So now we're ready to start working on step 101. So the first thing we need to do is we need to add a folder so we can take our menu data, which will be a JSON file, and have a place to put it. So we'll go ahead and we'll create the folder, and the file is provided for you in the lesson. So we'll come out to the lesson and we'll see on assignment resources that we have the inside out menu JSON data file available to us. And so we clicked on it, and what it did is it opened a modal in here. You can just close that, and also you can see that it downloaded it here. We can show that in folder, and we'll extract all and extract it. And now that we have it extracted, we can drop it right into our data folder. Let's close these windows so we don't get confused and take a look at what it is we brought over. What we brought over is a JSON file, JavaScript object notation file. And in here is what will become our menu for inside out for our HTML 5-app version of the HTML website. So let's go ahead and talk about this for a minute and why we're using a JSON file, putting it in a data folder, why we wouldn't just build the list or stick the list inside our HTML. So JSON is one of the most common ways that we can get data, get information from another website or from another server or location, and it breaks it down into this JSON format so that we can actually parse through it, look through it based on the hierarchy, and get pieces of information based on names. So we have key and values, right? We have keys and values. And what it allows us to do is just run through, loop through, and grab this information and then use it in our JavaScript application. Most common place that you'll get these files from is an API call, which we're learning about in our lesson as well. And essentially that's where we reach out to a server using a URL, and often we call it endpoints. So basically this would be the result of us calling a server and saying, give us menus, please. So we'll be using this to actually create our menu, which allows us to manage that menu not from the HTML code itself, but actually from the JSON file, and eventually we can transition this over to pull this same data from WordPress or from another web application platform. So the next thing that we want to do now is we actually want to bring this JSON information into our website. The first thing that we want to do to be able to do that is we're going to go ahead and instead of building everything inside this one page, we're going to go ahead and put in our JS folder, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call that file app.js. So we're just creating a app.js. So we're just creating a JavaScript file that we will use to pull into our index.html page. And to do this, the other thing that we'll do is in that file, we'll actually bring this code over to that file so it's not sitting there. And so let's go ahead and we're going to cut that out of there, and we're going to save our index. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to put in here our code that we just pulled out of our index page. Now, if you watch, because we no longer have that index JavaScript in here, and we go out and we actually view our page and we refresh it, our header no longer works. And that's because it's no longer there, it's no longer available to execute. And so the way that we take care of that is we'll come into our header, and we'll clean that up, and then we're going to scroll all the way down here to the footer. And down here in the footer is where we're actually going to put our JavaScript for the remainder of at the end of the page. And the reason we're going to do this is because nothing has to execute before the page is loaded at this point. And for that reason, it makes no sense to clog up the process when we can just bring everything in down at the end of the page. And we'll close that tag. And so now we're pointing to our app.js file that we created in the bottom of the page, and we'll hit save, and we can come in and we'll refresh, and we can see now that it's working, and that's because we're pulling it in. One thing we're going to do at this point is we're going to go ahead and right click on the page as well, and we're going to open up console. Biggest reason we're going to do that is because we want to watch for errors that may occur while we're developing. Great. So now that we have our app file linked inside of here, we can actually see that we can get to it by using this top part, this top menu bar, I just closed the app page, and you can actually get into all of your files that are linked to your to a file just through this reference up here. We can see what font awesome. We can see what jQuery looks like. We can see what Popper looks like. But right now we're going to focus on our on our app.js. You'll notice this as well. It's called init. You'll see a lot of functions. A lot of times there's a function init, and what init does is the intention of it is it's the initial, when a page loads, it's the initial functionality that you want to fire off. With that said, we're going to go ahead, since we already have a function init, which again, it'll wait till the entire window loads. It's basically saying window on load, run this function. And inside here, we're going to include our first Ajax call. And so the way that we're going to start that is we're going to use predefined functions by jQuery, and we're going to use the Ajax function. And because it's a function, of course, we close it in parentheses and brackets, braces, whatever you want to call them. And inside here, because it is a function, we have the opportunity to define a few parameters, arguments. And the first one that we're going to start with is method. And what we're telling it is that we want it to use the get method. And like any list or array of information that you're feeding, we always separate it. It's comma separated in this case. And the next one we're going to ask for is the URL. And what this URL is basically, not basically, it is the path to our menu.json file. After that, we want to tell it what type of data we're getting. So we're actually going to feed in a parameter called data type. And we're going to tell it that it's going to be JSON. We're returning JSON. That's what we're expecting back. The next thing that we're going to put, the next parameter we're going to put is success. And what this does is once that call has been made and everything has been retrieved without error-free, it will come to this part of the function and when it's successful, and we're going to tell it when it is successful, we want it to execute a function, and you'll see that we now have an empty function inside of that success. And then we're going to go after one more parameter inside this call, and that parameter is called error. We want to know if something goes wrong, we want to know that something went wrong, and we want to be able to do something about it with it. Even if that's just letting the person on our website know, hey, we can't get this information, there was a problem. So just for demonstration purposes, let's go ahead and put a console.log, and we'll call this call was good. And I should have put that inside of, there we go. And then what we'll do is I'm a fan of copy and paste through and through. We'll put down here, call was bad. So at this point, we're telling it on page init, when the page is done loading, go ahead and fire off, do the event listener, that bit up there for the shrinking text in the header. And then go ahead and reach out, do a get, grab this JSON file right here, and bring it back and read it as JSON. If it was good, do this. If it was not good, if there was an error, do this. So let's go ahead and save that and see what happens. We have our console open, and while console's open, if you left click on the refresh button, you can actually, it gives you some options, and you can actually empty your cache right from there. So right out of the gate, we have a problem. And the problem is that it did not see the JSON file. It does not know where the JSON file is. So how I know it did not find the file is a 404 basically is an error that's thrown when the browser is looking for something and it cannot find it. A 404 is known as a not found, as it states, and also of course it returned bad. I know now from looking at the 404 in my head, I know, oh, well look, we put the data file inside the assets folder. And so if we go and change that path, that relative path, to assets, we should end up with a good. And we did. All good. So one last thing we're going to do for this part, of the lesson, is we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at what that data looks like as now that we're pulling it in through JSON and Ajax call, pulling the JSON in, it's returning it as a JSON object. Now how do we access that information? Well, when this is done making this call and we told it its data type is JSON, Ajax creates an object. And on success in this function, this object exists inside of this function. And what we can do is we can say data. And basically what we're doing is telling it, give me that object as data, as the object data with the name data. And so if we come in here and we put console log and we put data inside of there, we're telling it to take the results of this call and just dump it out inside here as an object. So if we come out and we do a cache, clear cache, empty cache, and refresh again, what we end up with is basically a JavaScript array. And if we look at that more closely, what we can see is that this array mimics basically the JSON file that we brought in. And we actually have 3 elements at the top level, and this array breaks down into more elements as we go through. For this part of the lesson, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to worry about these top level elements first, and we're going to place them up here. And then we'll move on to the rest. And so the thing that we want to do here is we want to identify a couple things. We want to know if the data array that's being returned from the JSON has, if it has a length. And what we can do is we can say dot length. And what dot length will do is tell us how long that array is. So if we come in and we empty cache, oh no, we have a problem. And the reason that we have a problem is what I'm asking it to do is give me a length. Let me save it again and come out and refresh. I'm asking it to give me a length, and the problem is that the first item inside the object doesn't have a length. It's only one object. So basically what we have to tell it is, hey, look inside this menu object and then give us a length. And the way that we do that, and you can see menu equals array. And the way that we do that is we take this data and we put dot menu dot length, and now if we have it right, it should return a 4. And we got our 4. So to start off with, for our menu, what we're going to do is we're going to take this information and we're going to go ahead and just build the top level of our menu. And as I said, we don't want to try to build a menu if there's nothing there to be built. So we start out with a conditional statement, and basically what we're saying is if data menu length is greater than 0, then do the following. If it's not, if it's equal to 0 or less, then don't do anything. But if it's greater than 0, what I want you to do is I want you to take each of the items. So we're going to say, again, data dot menu, and we're telling it for each item that you find in there, I want you to complete the following function. And so if I come in here inside my function, just like up here with this function, there was information outside of it that I want to be passed into it. The same principle is here. So I'm saying for each of these items that you find inside the data menu, I want you to attach it to an object and call that object item. And what I want you to do with that item is, for now, so I can just see what's going on, I want you to do a console log, and what I want you to log is the entire item. So let's save that and let's see what that does. Let's clear our console, come down here, up there, empty cache, and there we have it. Each one of the items found below menu. So if we go and we actually look at our JSON, immediately below, put that there just for cleanliness so we can see. Directly below menu, which we're saying data menu, how many items are there? Each one of these, and you can see by each one of these is considered an item, or another object we can call it. And it produces love who challenges you. And we have love who challenges you. So now that we know that that information's coming in, we want to see what we can do with it, and we might as well just go ahead and there we go. We might as well go out here, find the menu, which is our nav. And for now, all we want to do is tell it to create one of these, right? To create a link. So we can go back in here, and through using jQuery, it's not too difficult, because what we can do is we can come in here and we can say, in the nav element, I want you to append, and then inside here we can actually put HTML and a mixture of HTML and our item. And so we're going to say append a href equals, and then we can close that, and then we're going to say we're going to close the anchor tag as well. And now this is where we can actually start to use our variable. And if we look in here, we can see that the menu name is named MenuName and the link is MenuLink, right? And because we have that available to us, we have menu name and menu link in each one of these. Menu link, menu name. Now what we can do in here is we can actually take this and we can say item, and because we're using JavaScript, we want to concatenate things. We can put gotta watch out, Dreamweaver likes to do double Sonia all the time. We can put item dot menu name. And while we're at it, we can just copy what we put there, and in our href, we can put menu link. And the reason that we can do this is because it will actually call from JSON menu link, as we just saw, menu name, menu link. So if we save that and we go ahead and we go out here, and let's shrink up our console a little. Those objects will still draw down there, but we don't really want to see them. Where we want to watch is up here. And we empty the cache. All of a sudden we see that it added our links. And if you look, they won't go anywhere, but if you look, it actually put in the link as well. Let's go ahead and get rid of these and try it again. So we'll go out to our index.html, and inside the nav element, which is the element that we're calling with jQuery, we'll go ahead and just get rid of them and save. And if we come out and we highlight, we empty cache, now we get exactly what we were looking for. Love who challenges you. So that'll be it for this lesson, and in our next lesson we're going to build out the menus even further by extending our code in here, what we've done in here, by adding more code and telling it how to handle each of those additional menu items. Quick review of what we did over in lesson 1, step 101. I'm going to go ahead and collapse the folder and close all the files. And I'm going to open up the index. First thing that should be different in here compared to 100, step 100, is that we removed the script that was in the top and we put that in the app.js file that we created, which we'll review in a second. Additionally, we removed the static links that were found in the nav, and now we are populating the nav through JS, which we'll take a look at in a little bit. Additionally, in the beginning of the lesson, we went ahead and we updated our jQuery pull from the CDN to replace the full version, the slim version, with the full version. And we also created our app.js file, which we pulled into this file as well. In our assets folder, we did nothing with CSS, so your CSS folder still should have CSS, footer CSS, header resize CSS, and an empty style.css. In our JS folder, we went ahead and our header resize JS stayed the same, but we added an app.js. And in there, we included from the index page the function init that we had previously in the head of the index.html, and we discussed that. And inside of that, we also added our ajax, in which we did called in a file, experienced an error, talked about how to bring the data in. We had to look at the data. We talked about how to see how many items are in the data, and if there are, how to loop through them and do something with them, as well as use the jQuery append to create our links. We also discussed the window load, event listener, which is outside of the init. And then inside the assets folder, we added a new folder called data. And inside that data folder, we brought in our menu.json file, which we downloaded in the assignment resources section of the assignment. Till next time.